What a young life.
He's the little boy whose disappearance gripped the nation.
A new lead in the disappearance of Etan Patz.
Etan Patz, little boy, it was just everywhere. It was just haunting. Many pictures I remember taking, including this one. But this just shows a happy kid with a future. It's just joyous. My name is Carrie Boretz, and I am a photojournalist. I began in 1975, interning at the Village Voice. I remember it was early fall, and I was still really raw shooting. Every day I would spend a few minutes on the streets because I was still living with my parents on Long Island. So this was all very new to me, shooting on the streets of New York. It was a mother, you could tell, with a few kids all lined up, holding each other, holding the stroller. And it was just really a lovely image. And it wasn't a riveting image, but it was just sweet. And I knew I wanted to take it. And I shot one frame. I remember it was easy to shoot. The 70s was easy. There were no barriers. So this was just lovely. And I remember standing there. I do remember standing there in that corner just going, wow, can't wait till I have kids. So many years later, I decided to do a book of my street photography of New York, the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And I have thousands and thousands of negatives. I scanned every single roll I had ever taken. I'll never forget the day. I'm looking with my loupe at the negatives on the light table, and I see this kid, this face, and I printed it up, and there was Etan Patz.
At 7:55 last Friday morning, Julie Patz says she took her son downstairs. She came back up and watched from this fire escape as he passed down West Broadway toward the bus stop, where a group of other children and parents were waiting. She never dreamed he didn't get on that bus, not until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when he failed to return home.
Etan was this supposedly sweet, adoring kid who was just happy, and he was 6, begged his parents to go to the bus stop. They lived in a very family-oriented area of New York back then, Soho. Everyone knew each other. He was walking, and he went out of view, and that was the last time they saw him.
I hope he's with somebody wiser than he, who will take care of him and is still taking care of him. And if he is, I don't want to hurt you in any way. I don't want to prosecute. I just want whoever you are to bring him home.
Who could not remember that face? It was on every milk carton. I remember hanging out on the pier on Bank Street on the Village, just hanging out with my friends, and the airplanes would go by with the banners. Etan Patz, little boy, it was just everywhere. It was everywhere. It was the first big case, and the fact that he was just never found. And I held on to it for around a year. Part of me wanted to figure out how to get in touch with the parents, but I knew that the father had been a professional photographer and they had dozens of photographs of him, and I didn't want to reopen any wounds. And so I held on to it. I felt like I had this little treasure of a life that had been destroyed, but just I had caught in a moment of joy, and I felt very protective of him. I felt really close to him in a way, and then I felt really guilty that I had held on to it. So I decided to reach out to an editor at the New York Magazine, and they did this piece about it. And subsequently, they found the guy who did it, and they brought him to trial.
A man has reportedly just confessed that he killed the 6-year-old boy. He has been identified as Pedro Hernandez.
Pedro Hernandez is in a jail cell, seen here in pictures obtained by Inside Edition.
This photo from Inside Edition's website shows Pedro Hernandez.
The DA called me and said, we just saw your photograph, we'd love to have it and blow it up and keep it in the courtroom and use it as a photograph of, showing what was destroyed. I find it extraordinary that the sense of timing of all this, of the photograph being used in the courtroom, that it had just been published, the DA saw it and used it just in time for the indictment of this murderer of Etan. I'm glad they got the guy. I'm glad he was indicted. And if my picture had any part of that, I'm happy about that. Of course it didn't, but the fact that it was in the presence of that courtroom sort of completed it for me. It wasn't going to sway the jury, but there was a little tiny bit of positive feeling on my part that I had shot this, something so innocent and ordinary. It was just an ordinary photograph, which is really what I shoot. I shoot ordinary moments, you know, that become extraordinary sometimes in a way. And this became horribly extraordinary.